Good afternoon, everyone. It's David Schlotthauer here with another detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion for Saturday, September the 14th, 2024. So here's a look at the latest GOES 16 true color visible satellite imagery, courtesy of tropicaltidbits.com. Dr. Levi Cowan. There's a link in the description below this video. So as we do take a look at the entire Atlantic, we have a lot of subtropical moisture mischief going on down here. We have an area of disturbed weather off the Carolina coast that may become our next subtropical system as this actually develops out here and then curves back onshore into the North Carolina coast over the next 7 days. We have Tropical Storm Gordon out here that is not going to be threatening any land. This is still expected to turn north eventually. And so right now this does look to be an out to sea storm or a fish storm. And then later on in the September timeframe, we're going to have to keep an eye still on the main development region and then eventually into the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. Taking a look at the latest 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida. And as you can see here, we do have Tropical Storm Gordon with winds of 45 miles an hour, minimum central pressure of 1,004 millibars. Movement is generally westward at about 9 to 10 miles an hour. And then here is our other area of disturbed weather off the southeastern U.S. There is a 40 to 50% chance of that developing into a subtropical type system. Could bring a lot of heavy rainfall, gusty winds, and maybe even some high surf for these areas. So keep in mind, we will be talking about this system if trends continue to go up on the chances. In fact, let's briefly talk about that disturbance off the southeastern coast of the Carolinas. And as we can see here on the GFS model, this is the surface wind plot in miles per hour. And as we go into the next 24 hours or so this is for Sunday morning, we do have some pretty strong winds here of about 40 to 50 miles an hour. So this would be certainly a subtropical like system that does develop here and then continuing to strengthen a little bit more by Sunday afternoon. You can see here winds from the northeast at around 50 to 60 miles an hour. This would be definitely a subtropical like system developing off the Carolina coast, South Carolina, North Carolina. Wilmington, North Carolina is down here. So definitely some strong winds there, some heavy rainfall and some flooding. And then that really tries to consolidate as it gets closer right over Wilmington, North Carolina by Monday morning. So this would be in about a day and a half to 2 days out when this would be making landfall. So anyone living in the North and South Carolina area really needs to be watching this system very closely as moderate to heavy rainfall is expected. In fact, when we take a look at that rainfall forecast over the next 3 days, we can see that rainfall totals anywhere between 2 to 4 inches, up to 4 to even 5 inches along the North Carolina coast over that 3-day time frame. So again, flooding is certainly a possibility here. My gosh, you guys have had too much rainfall with Debbie. Now we're dealing with possibly Helene, our H named storm. If it does get named from the National Hurricane Center, wouldn't surprise me at all. And so anyone living here really needs to be monitoring the progress of this system as to development into a subtropical storm or a tropical storm is certainly possible in the next 2 to 3 days. You could even see this from the European Ensemble forecast indicating quite a bit of rainfall here, anywhere between about an inch to a couple of inches, maybe up to 3 inches of rainfall off the North Carolina, South Carolina coast, including for eastern Virginia. But not only that, there could be also more enhanced rainfall and shower and thunderstorm activity over the Alabama area, Mississippi, Tennessee, and portions there of Arkansas, where you might see an additional 2 to 3 inches of rainfall. So now with that being said, let's look ahead at the forecast on the GFS model. This is our cyclonic relative vorticity, our geopotential height, and our winds in the lower levels of the atmosphere. So these color shading indicate how much spin there is in the atmosphere. So this is vorticity, another way to kind of show you all where a lot of energy is being focused for these low pressure systems. And then the lines here indicate your geopotential height. So a topographical map of the atmosphere where there's more air, the ridging, there's higher heights, and lower heights indicate more troughing and unsettled weather. And our wind barbs here are indicated with these little flags with two little barbs coming off of them. That shows us our wind speed and direction. I know it's a little bit to take in. That's why I'm being a little simple in this video. But we can see in the next 24 hours or so, so by, say by Monday or Sunday morning, that is, we can see there is our tropical system that we are going to be watching along that frontal zone, that decaying frontal boundary. We have another area of spin on the eastern side of that. And then the GFS indicates there's Gordon. So a few areas to watch out there right now in the Atlantic. Let's go forward and see what happens here. In the next 3 days, by Tuesday, you can see that disturbance moves inland of the Carolinas, also in Virginia, by Tuesday or by Monday night into Tuesday morning. But that's not it. We're going to have to keep an eye on what goes on with this area of disturbed weather. There's a lot of vorticity or spin-ups within this margin of envelope of energy. Which area wins out? There's been a lot of wild chaos theory going on with the GFS. Either this tries to consolidate quickly and moves out this way, or this tries to consolidate and just kind of hangs around out here in the middle of the Atlantic. But both scenarios here do not indicate anything in the way of a landfall. And in this case, the 12Z GFS in the next 10 days does indicate we could get a named storm. But again, way too far out, 10 days out. And the reason why it's too far out is if we look at the previous run, the 06Z run from last night, nothing. And then nothing on there. So it's very hard to believe if this is actually going to be on the next run. Probably not. So probably going to put a big X on that for right now. Nothing to be concerned about. Down here in the deep tropics, nothing to worry about. Maybe a couple of tropical waves that could try developing later on in the period. And going all the way out in time, still not seeing much in the way of development. However, we are going to have to still keep an eye on the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico for that Central American gyre mischief. We could see some tropical development out of that. And then maybe more activity, maybe coming off of Africa. But still in all, the intertropical convergence zone is still way too far north for this time of the year. And this is kind of awkward to see that. So we'll see if that moves further south eventually, but it doesn't look like it's going to do so anytime soon, at least in the next 10 days. The European model has a whole different scenario and a little bit of different thinking on what happens off the eastern coast here of the United States. So we can see here on the Euro, the system does take a little bit more time to consolidate. So in 51 hours, it is still off the coast here of South Carolina versus the GFS has it more further north into North Carolina. But we can see here, there is Gordon. Here is more tropical energy coming off of Africa in the next 3 to 4 to 5 days. You can see by day 5, that area of disturbed weather is just hanging out here in the eastern U.S., where we have another area of bundled energy. That's what the GFS also indicated. The Euro seems to also think the same reasoning. In fact, the Euro is kind of on top of the previous GFS model runs, indicating maybe a little bit of a consolidation here of a system briefly. That would be Gordon as it moves generally northeast. But looking far out in time here in the next 10 days, there is not a whole lot going on off of Africa. Maybe a couple of tropical waves. But really, again, look at this big monsoon gyre right here. Really strong. We have winds out of the west here, out of the south here. Winds curve around like this. Here is that monsoonal gyre, and we will see what develops off of that. This is a look at the latest European ensemble prediction system. So these are different members, folks. This is not showing us, oh, we're going to have 4 or 5 or 10 hurricanes all at once out there in the end of September. These are different members giving us different solutions or ranges of possible outcomes. So we can see there is still that signal coming off of Africa towards the end of September. So beyond that 26th, that 27th time frame, we are seeing a chance of tropical development. We're also keeping an eye on the northwestern Caribbean and the southeastern Gulf of Mexico for some tropical development here. We can see some members here popping that up, some tropical storm tracks, but not much of a signal out here in the Caribbean just yet. Again, it is getting towards the end of September here on this forecast, and so Cabo Verde season really settles down by the time we go into late September into early October anyways, but because of how far the intertropical convergence zone is, we could still see some Cape Verde season going on here well into early October. The NOAA GEFS version 12 ensemble forecast here really still on top of it with some tropical development out here in the northwestern Caribbean, in the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, even in the southwestern Atlantic. I mean, if this does come true, folks, if this signal really stays and if the Euro catches onto this, we could still see some tropical storm, maybe a hurricane, even a couple of major hurricane tracks here. But again, this is very far out, 384 hours out. This is well into the very end. Actually, this is the last day of September. So again, very far out in time, but it is really, really worth taking note of in future model runs if this signal sticks over here, because this would be a big deal. Maybe a tropical storm, hurricane, or even a major hurricane. We still have some signals coming off of Africa here with some ensemble members picking up on tropical development here. You can see some of the green tracks indicating 1000 to 1010 millibar system. So this would be tropical depression type tracks, and even some blue colors here indicating maybe a tropical storm. But the signal here is somewhat minute versus over here in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. And again, this is through the 30th of September, really far out in time. Now, the reason why there is some signal on the GEFS and European ensemble forecast for tropical development in the Caribbean and in the Gulf of Mexico in the next 16 days is because when we look at our control velocity potential anomaly, so green areas here indicate upward motion into the atmosphere, so you can see all this upward motion, favorable environment coming over the Atlantic. Again, we talked about this. Beyond that 23rd, 26th time frame, we're seeing that favorable environment, and there may be a big outbreak of potential here over the middle of September. So between the 19th through the 23rd, we have all this upward motion. We have another pulse of upward motion here and another pulse of upward motion here. And so in all, this is looking really favorable for tropical genesis perhaps through the end of September. Again, between the 21st in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, and then the rest of the Atlantic by the end of September. We'll see with what the GFS and Euro models show down the road. Still very far out in time, but I'll tell you, the Atlantic is getting ready to open up for business for a flurry of activity. Even the GEFS ensemble control member is showing the same thing. Sinking motion now, so unfavorable environment over the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, and the main development region of the Atlantic. Things get really more active here with all that upward motion. Like I said, beyond the 24th to 26th of September, going to really open up here in the Atlantic. So we really got to watch things. We really do. And it is still hurricane season. And even so, we're not at the peak of hurricane season anymore. We're on the decrease. Still got to watch the tropics. Maybe the peak waits for another 2 or 3 weeks. Maybe this season is 2 or 3 weeks delayed from where it typically is. But anyways, if you did enjoy today's detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion for Saturday, September the 14th, 2024, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, folks. It really helps out the channel so much. Share this video with their family and friends. Leave a comment in the section below this video. And also, please ring the bell notification icon if you did subscribe to the channel, so you get all of my updates. You cannot ignore the bell notification icon, because some of you are probably wondering, why am I not getting updates from David's channel? You need to make sure you hit the bell icon to where it says all notifications, okay? Even on your smartphone, so you get all my updates. But anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll be back with you more soon with more on the tropics.